Megan always felt safe in her home until tonight. The evening had started like any other. After a long, tiring day, she finally lay down in bed, ready to rest. The soft sheets felt cool against her skin as she stretched out, letting out a deep sigh of relief. The warm glow of the setting sun peeked through the window, filling the room with a peaceful light. But then, something felt off. A quiet creak on the floor made her freeze. Her heart skipped a beat. Slowly, she turned toward the doorway. There stood Peter, her teenage nephew. She was sure she had locked the door. So how was he inside? Peter stood in the doorway, his figure dimly lit by the soft glow from the hallway. "Peter?" Megan called, her voice gentle but filled with curiosity. "What are you doing up?" He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering to the side before meeting hers again. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured. "I was just getting some water." Megan frowned slightly. "It's late. You should be in bed," she said, trying to dismiss the moment. But Peter didn't move. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step closer. Megan's heartbeat quickened. Something about his stare made her grip the blanket around her shoulders a little tighter. "Peter," she asked again, this time with caution. "I thought I heard something," he mumbled, hesitating. "Did you forget to lock the door?" Megan felt a knot form in her stomach. "I'm sure I locked it earlier," she replied quickly, trying to shake off the unease. "It's fine. Just go back to bed." Steps slow and measured. Megan's breathing grew shallow, her eyes darting between him and the doorway. "Peter," her voice was a warning now. "What are you doing?" He stopped just at the edge of her bed, his eyes clear, searching, lingered on her for a moment too long. Megan shifted slightly, uncomfortable beneath his gaze, and then it happened. His gaze dropped briefly but unmistakably to her legs. A chill ran down Megan's spine. The realization hit her hard. He had seen her bare skin, her exposed thighs. He had caught sight of her, and now he was standing there, watching. Her heart pounded harder. Megan's breath hitched in her throat. "Peter," she snapped, her voice rising in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Peter's eyes darted away, his face flushing. "I didn't mean to." Before he could finish, Megan's voice hardened. "Get out," she commanded, pointing toward the door. "Now go to your room." Peter's face went pale, and without another word he turned and fled the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Megan sat there in stunned silence, shaking. What just happened? Share and subscribe if you want to know what happens next. Megan sat on the edge of her bed, still trembling from what had just happened. Her heart was racing and the silence of the room felt suffocating. She glanced toward the door, half expecting Peter to come back, but the house remained eerily quiet. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, Peter's presence, his gaze on her, and that brief uncomfortable slip. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something had changed between them, something she couldn't ignore. As she rubbed her temples, trying to clear her mind, a sudden knock on the door startled her. "Mom," came Peter's muffled voice from the other side. Megan's eyes widened. She felt a wave of confusion and tension wash over her. "What do you want?" she asked cautiously. I'm sorry," Peter mumbled. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that." Megan's jaw tightened, her fingers clenched into fists. "Go to bed, Peter. I need some time alone." There was a pause on the other side of the door, then Peter whispered, "Please just let me in for a minute. I need to talk." Megan hesitated. Something about his voice, something desperate, made her uneasy, but against her better judgment she sighed and unlocked the door. It creaked open slowly and Peter stepped inside. He didn't meet her gaze immediately. Instead, his eyes darted to the floor. His posture was stiff, almost awkward. "First," Peter began, his voice shaking slightly, I didn't mean for things to get weird. I'm sorry." Megan frowned. "Weird?" Her tone was sharp. "You think this is just weird?" Peter sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I wasn't trying to. I wasn't thinking." Megan took a step forward. "What were you thinking?" she asked, her voice cold. "You come into my room in the middle of the night and look at me like I wasn't looking on purpose." Peter interrupted quickly. His face was flushed and he looked genuinely troubled. "It just happened," Megan scoffed, crossing her arms. "It just happened, Peter. You saw me half-dressed, like it didn't mean anything to you." Peter's eyes finally lifted to hers, and for the first time she saw something beyond guilt in his expression, something darker, a tension she couldn't quite name. flickered across his face. "I didn't mean to, but it's hard to forget," Peter muttered under his breath. Megan's breath caught in her throat. "What did you just say?" Her voice was a whisper now, barely audible. Peter hesitated, his jaw tightening. "It's hard to forget what I saw." The air between them grew heavier, thick with unspoken thoughts, lingering guilt, and something far more unsettling. Megan could feel it building, something wrong, something dangerous. "You need to leave," she finally said, her voice sharp and firm. "Go back to your room, Peter. We'll forget this ever happened." Peter's gaze dropped again. "I can't." Megan's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I can't stop thinking about it," Peter whispered, almost to himself, "about you." The air between them grew heavier, thick with unspoken thoughts, lingering guilt, and something far more unsettling. Megan's eyes narrowed, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anger. "You need to leave," she finally said, her voice sharp and firm. "Go back to your room, Peter. We'll forget this ever happened." Peter's gaze dropped again. "I can't." Megan's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I can't stop thinking about it," Peter whispered, almost to himself, "about you." Megan's breath hitched. "Stop it, just stop." She turned away, pacing toward the window, fists clenched. "This isn't right. None of this should have happened." Peter followed her, his footsteps soft but deliberate. "I don't know why it feels like this," he admitted quietly. "But it does, and it's not something I can just forget." Megan spun around, her frustration showing. "You're my nephew. This isn't normal. This isn't something we just brush aside." Peter's expression darkened. "It wasn't supposed to happen." Megan's heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Peter took a step closer, his gaze intense. "I just feel something, and it won't go away." Megan's breathing quickened. "You need help," she said firmly, stepping back. Peter cut her off. "I don't need help. I just need you to understand." Megan's eyes widened in shock. "What it is?" "You're my nephew. This is twisted. It's wrong." Peter's face contorted. "It feels real to me. I didn't ask for it." Megan's voice trembled with anger. "You need to stop this right now." Peter's eyes locked on hers, something dangerous in them. "I can't." Megan's hands trembled. "You don't have a choice. You can stop." Peter stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "I'm sorry, but I don't know if I can." Megan's pulse throbbed violently as she stepped back, bumping into her bed. "Get out," she whispered, feeling trapped, exposed. Peter's voice cut through the tension. "We're connected now. There's no going back." Megan's breath quickened, panic rising. "You're my nephew. You can't mean what you're saying." Peter's gaze softened but remained steady. "I do, and I don't know what to do with it anymore." Megan sat motionless, her mind racing. She felt trapped in a nightmare. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, "Hope you're okay. We need to talk soon. Call me when you can." But Megan couldn't focus. Her thoughts were consumed by Peter, his eyes, his touch. She realized it wasn't just a fleeting attraction, it was something deeper, more dangerous. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw Peter standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I shouldn't have come in here," he muttered. Megan's eyes narrowed. "No, you shouldn't have." Conflict in his eyes. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Peter muttered, his voice barely audible. I don't know what to do with these feelings anymore." Megan's heart pounded, fury and fear mingling within her. "This is wrong," she snapped. "You need to walk away. Forget about this." Peter's lips curled into a bitter smile. "It's not that easy, Megan. I can't just forget how I feel." Megan's fists clenched tighter as she backed away. "You have to. I won't let this destroy everything." Peter took a step closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You can't stop this now, Megan." Megan's legs shook, her chest tight with fear. "I'm your aunt. I raised you. How could you let this happen?" Peter's eyes darkened, something dangerous flickering in them. "It wasn't just me. It was you too." Megan staggered back, the words cutting through her like a blade. She was trembling, unable to process the weight of what he had just said. Peter's voice softened, almost regretful. "I never meant for it to go this far." The tension between them hung heavy, suffocating. Megan paced back and forth, her thoughts a blur. How had everything gone so wrong? How had she let him get so close? Peter stood silently, watching her, his expression unreadable but with something deeply conflicted behind his eyes. Way out, a way to fix everything before it spiraled even further. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "This isn't love, Peter. It's something else, something dangerous." Peter's expression flickered, but his eyes remained unwavering, locked onto hers. "I didn't ask for this to happen either," he said, his voice strained. "But now it's real, Megan, and I can't pretend it's not." Megan took another step back, her heart hammering in her chest, every instinct telling her to run, to escape this nightmare. "No," she gasped, shaking her head. This can't be real." Peter's jaw tightened, his voice barely a whisper as he took another step closer. "It is. And I can't stop it. I can't stop feeling this way about you." Megan's breath hitched, her eyes wide with terror. She wanted to scream, to make him understand that this was wrong, that they couldn't let it continue. But the words stuck in her throat, trapped by the weight of everything they had just confessed. "You need to leave," Megan finally managed to say, her voice low but firm, though her hands trembled. "Now. Before this goes any further." Peter's gaze softened for a brief moment, but there was something dark in the way he watched her. "I can't, Megan. I'm already too far in." Megan felt the walls closing in, the weight of their broken reality crushing her. This was no longer a situation she could fix or undo. It was something darker, something beyond her control. She didn't know how to stop it, but she knew one thing for certain: this was not a mistake they could just forget. Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Please, just go." But Peter stood still, his eyes locked with hers, and the room grew colder. The air between Megan and Peter is heavy with tension, and the words spoken are like a twisted knot in their relationship that only grows tighter as time passes. Megan's insistence on ignoring what happened, to pretend that it was a mistake, reflects her desperate need to hold on to the world as she knew it before, when family was safe and sacred. But Peter, despite the overwhelming sense of wrongness, is trapped in a whirlwind of emotions that he can't simply turn off. His refusal to give up on what he feels, even if it defies logic and morality, places them both at a crossroads. What happens next could go in several directions. Peter's struggle for control. Peter might decide to fight harder for their relationship, confronting Megan again and again, trying to convince her that they can find a way to make it work despite the taboo. His internal battle might become more pronounced as he grows more desperate, pushing Megan further away but unable to let go. Megan's resolve cracks. Megan might find it harder to ignore the pull between them. The forbidden attraction, the quiet longing she still feels, could resurface, making her question if she can ever fully walk away. This could lead to her struggling internally, torn between doing what's right and succumbing to what feels emotionally right in the moment. External pressure, an outside force, could become a catalyst. Someone else might start to notice the strange dynamics between Megan and Peter. This could force them to confront the consequences of their actions in a more public way, adding pressure that could either tear them apart or push them toward a breaking point. Breaking the connection completely, Megan might decide that the only way to truly escape this dangerous spiral is to cut off all contact with Peter, distancing herself emotionally and physically from him. This could lead to Peter retreating, realizing that he's lost her for good, or it might escalate into a confrontation where the truth comes out in a shocking, explosive way. This internal and external conflict could lead them down dark paths, each struggling with their emotions, their roles, and the looming consequences of their actions. The real question is whether either of them can live with the burden of what's happened, and if so, what price they'll ultimately pay. What do you think will happen? Will Megan continue to fight against what they feel, or will Peter's persistence win out in the end?